Why did you move to Vietnam? Just because you bought a place, I suppose. Just like I moved to
No,
Cornwall.
no. I came to Vietnam in 2006 and I worked 10 years as a professional services consultant implementing ERP systems like financial management system called Infor Sun Systems. And so that was mostly with international clients. So I was based out of Vietnam, but I would be traveling all the time.
Mm.
And my background is software engineering, but I spent 10 years training people on how to enter invoices into an accounting system without knowing anything about accounting initially. So that was like, and that's kind of where I learned that you really only understand something um, if you can explain it to someone else, but also you get a very different perspective from other people. Because they put me in front of like manuals of this accounting system, and they said, okay, in 1 month you're going to the customer, you're going to shadow a senior first, and then later you're going to have to do the trainings on your own,
So
right?
you're training like Vietnamese,
No, 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 international. So I was based out of Vietnam, but the company I worked for had a very big contract with Hilton hotels worldwide. So I went mostly to Hilton hotels like Garden Inn or
Are you allowed
um,
to say these
DoubleTree.
people's names? Or do I have to retract?
No,
Like,
it's fine. I worked 10 years for pretty much mainly on Hilton and some other hospitality clients.
all right.
But yeah, I mean it's not a secret.
Okay. Then how did you get into infrastructure then? How did you become a Kubernetes? I mean, I think I knew you back in Singapore as a Kubernetes zealot.
Right.
Made me
Absolutely.
which made me want to push you away because I just had bad experience after bad experience with Kubernetes. I mean, I use Kubernetes, don't get me wrong, and when it's appropriate, but it does frustrate me.
Yeah, so after about 7 years of going to customers, so from 2006 until 2013 about most of the time I would we would be there to a whole day to install a Windows systems. We would be having a Word document and we would have our installation, with the requirements for the client because every customer we work with, they have different requirements. If they are a real estate investment fund in Luxembourg, they have different security requirements than the hospitality, like the way that they manage the servers, the way that you get access to a server. And I also worked for Cement, which is a Holcim subsidiary in Azerbaijan. And I worked and always had to like follow these manual like installation steps from a Word document. And I wrote a lot of PowerShell scripts to kind of like automate that process. You know, I had a lot of fun with like active, is it ADO, active objects from Microsoft in .NET. So with PowerShell, you actually have like the whole .NET. So you could create any object that the Windows system had, and I could load like Access database files. So some of this software that I worked with used Access databases. So I
Okay.
could use PowerShell to load the Access database, read
Yeah.
some of the data, modify it. So I
Access
started
database is bringing
making,
me back now. Gosh, you must be as old as I
yeah,
am.
yeah. So that was a lot of fun, like because we had a lot of bash scripts and stuff that other consultants had built. But yeah, I mean, we as we do the same thing a lot, so we try to optimize our work, right? So we have some internal scripts that we have, and that's part of our professional services, our expertise that we bring to
Okay, okay.
supply the system, right? So I actually spent a lot of time building unattended install scripts with PowerShell. And it was once I saw one customer, which was Cement, and they had the whole VMware that was back in 2000, I don't know, 2011, maybe before that. VMware was already spread quite in a lot of places, but
Mm.
I was working on like preparing a training session and I had everything set up on my virtual machine, but then I had to copy over the settings to the actual client server for a training session. And I said, "Oh no, I ran out of time." And one of the IT administrators says, you're running VMware. Um, what's your IP address? Let me clone the VM machine from your laptop, and I'll create
Yeah.
4 copies for every attendee." Yeah, and I was like, "What the hell?" So after spending all this time creating screenshots. So we have a document, we take screenshots of what we have actually done on their
Uh,
machine and then, hand over to the IT administrator. After doing that flowing for many customers, I come to this place and they're like, let me connect to your laptop to the VMware port and copy the VM. I was like, okay, what the hell? At that point, I kind of realized that all of this Windows manual process is kind of nonsense. And I started looking also, I wanted to run game servers and I learned I had like we bought like a PowerEdge Dell server that we wanted to put in a data center, like a colo in Vietnam with a friend to run games on it. And he
what game?
needed Windows. Yeah, I wanted Counter-Strike, CSGO at the time,
Mm.
right? Around 2013. And at the time he needed Windows for he ran a big gaming news website, igame.vietnam in Vietnam, and he wanted to host an up and coming game, but it was Windows only. So I ran my we needed to run VMs, right? Windows and Linux. And so then I also wanted to have better performance because as soon as you run Counter-Strike in the VM, you start having performance problems. So I started to play with like Linux containers and Docker at the time, and that's how I got into Docker originally. And I started going to meetups in Vietnam to learn about like I want to ingest because I wanted to create a gaming platform for Counter Strike that was like ESL existed, HLTV existed. Those are very big like Counter Strike related services,
Okay.
and I felt that they did not give a lot of like statistics. There was Fragbyte, oh, sorry, not Fragbyte, GotFrag in America. They gave an ESEA. They had very detailed statistics like about your contribution to a round. They calculated so they could assign skill points to a player much better than
Oh
most
wow.
of the other platforms. Yeah, so I was like, I had built gaming, I had ran gaming tournaments in Belgium. So I knew how to get all of the logs. So you could get every single event from the logs. So you could tell the Counter-Strike server to send all the logs to you. And
Cool.
I was used to
Lots of
like
metrics. Yeah.
yeah, I was used basically at the time you used like like IRC bots, you say a certain keyword and that message was received and the bot would identify with the regular expression or whatever, or just look if the text starts with a certain keyword and then it would execute commands. So people would say things and if it had that command, then the bot would respond. So we had like a bot that would read the Counter-Strike logs and then would keep track of the score and then keep track of like when it needs to restart or switch the teams so they could manage a tournament. So I was like, cool, I just need to ingest all of the statistics about the players. So I wanted to build like a platform and I learned Angular and Node.js and Python and tried to build this on my own at the same time, as a side project. And I then really got into Docker and go to meetups. So I got into the Docker meetups and then
Yeah, that's cool.
of
Like
course
a lot. I mean, I basically got into this game through gaming, and I think that's a
yeah.
very common what do you call it, origin story for a lot of people in this business.
Yeah. Yeah,
Running
and
game servers to infrastructure engineers.
yes, and also going to the meetups gave you a lot of like insights into what other people were doing and allowed you to talk to people and figure out like even though I was at my day job, I was working for 10 years with like these just financial accounting systems and building .NET and PowerShell scripts and things like that. And then now I was like learning Bash, Python, Docker, like immutable servers and so that was like really exciting and interesting, you know. But
But then
um
then you got into Kubernetes hard.
yeah, so one of the meetups that was around 2014 after the Google people had announced Kubernetes as a project at the DockerCon. Um, it looked way overkill. Like initially when I looked at what they talked about, the kubelet that was interesting, like yeah, you could run that separately to get like information about your Docker daemon and the containers on your host. So that was like, yeah, maybe I like the kubelet, but I don't like this everything else, right?
Yeah,
And
but the
then
control plane is quite good, isn't it? Like,
it was absolutely crazy in the beta. So back in 2014, I think around September, they went from beta to like stable V1 around September. So they had announced it in July and it looked really complicated. And at the time, I was using DigitalOcean because I didn't know AWS. and I wanted like simple VPS, right? A droplet cost like $5 a month, and it
Yeah.
was great for hobby,
Oh,
right?
DigitalOcean was great, wasn't it? It was so easy.
Yeah, yeah, and but they had also a bounty. Like if you propose an article and they approved it, then they would give you like $30 credit to run
Oh,
and
yeah.
build and write the article for them.
That was a
And their
brilliant
ex
idea.
sorry.
That was a brilliant idea to get people engaged. Yeah.
Yeah, so to basically create a huge knowledge base and to have the community build a lot of interesting use cases on top of DigitalOcean. And there was an article from a guy who worked at DigitalOcean, I think, about setting up Kubernetes on DigitalOcean droplets. But it was like you originally Kubernetes was all bash shell scripts. Like you had to run this script to build this and that. I mean, it was horrible installation mechanism. And then Kelsey Hightower had written this guide for CoreOS. So I was using CoreOS a lot, which is like
Yeah.
um,
Chorus,
you
really good.
everything is through systemd unit. So it
Yeah.
was all systemd,
Yeah.
and then they built their fleet
I
on
love
top
I
of
love I love the
systemd.
upgrade mechanism where
Yeah,
yeah,
so they have dual boot, and they
yeah.
had like a locksmith to base. And etcd was from CoreOS, right? They used etcd to track the whole fleet when one acquired the lock to reboot into the second partition. They also used the idea of channels. So if you are running on a certain version of CoreOS and you're subscribed to like the stable channel, and a
Yeah.
new version is available, it would, behind the scenes download
Yeah.
the new version on a second partition, and then it
I
would
think that came
acquire a
out
lock.
of Chrome OS. Slight little tangent. Before
Hmm.
Chrome OS, I had my startup Web Converger, which had an update mechanism which I thought was quite novel. I still think it's novel, and that was based on Git. So basically, the whole root of the OS is checked into Git, and then the idea is that it once it's running, you do a Git pull, and that's how it gets the sort of like deltas, and then on reboot, it checks out the new updates. So I was quite, and I'm still am quite, well, boasting or promoting my method over the Chrome OS one because I still think the Chrome OS one is a little bit overkill. But anyway,
Right. Um, so the cool thing was I really loved CoreOS, and Kelsey was working at CoreOS and had this very nice guide on how to set up a Kubernetes fleet using CoreOS. But he had only examples for AWS, and at the time maybe even Google Cloud. It was before he joined Google, and those guides were like, first you have to create your private key infrastructure, your
oh yeah,
PKI. Um,
yeah, Kubernetes is the hard way. That's how it starts, I believe.
Well, it was the hard way before the hard way was a thing. So I wrote this guide for DigitalOcean, which was massive. It started by bootstrapping your PKI with self-signed certificate authority, generating different client keys for the etcd clients, setting up Flannel. And I did a full deep dive into like
What is
how does
flannel again? I've forgotten. It sounds
Flannel was a CoreOS VXLAN packet encapsulation system. So it's basically to create the overlay network, right? When Kubernetes, that's one of the great things about Kubernetes, right? Every container within the fleet must be able to talk to other containers that may be running on different machines. So they create this overlay network on
mm,
top of the underlying cloud network. So you create like maybe three CoreOS droplets, and then you create a bunch of Flannel daemons that keep track of the range of IP addresses containers within their host can have. And then Flannel, whenever a network packet comes in, encapsulates that network packet on the overlay network, encapsulate it in the underlay network to then send it to the right node, and then that decapsulate it and then send it, okay, the source is this container.
all
So,
right.
so Flannel was a very basic one, you backed by etcd, and then kind of merged with Calico because Calico added additional ways of encapsulation that were less like latency and introduced less latency. So
Right.
so so it was super interesting. I mean, all of these tools came out of CoreOS, and actually this was after somebody within the Docker meetup had asked like, hey, this Kubernetes thing, does somebody want to look at it? And I had that, and it was around the V1 release. So a lot of these stuff was getting stabilized. So there were less bash scripts to download all the binaries. You actually had proper Golang binaries that you could download from the releases, and so I was able to talk about it, like watching Brandon Burns and Kelsey Hightower talk about Kubernetes. and seeing the live demo of Kelsey Hightower where he just, triggers a replica set. I think it was later that they introduced deployments. Originally, it was a replication. It was not replica set. It was like replica controller. But it was very confusing because the name of the object was called like a replication controller, where you give it the number of pods you want to run. But then in reality, the controller is something that runs inside the inside the control plane that looks at the request. And the actual object is the replica set, is how many you want to run of them, right? So then they renamed it on V1.1 or 1.2, and they introduced a thing called the deployment to basically control the rollover mechanism. Like, how do you want to roll out between different replica sets? So that was all introduced around the time that I went to FOSS Asia in Singapore and do a presentation about Kubernetes there. So I was talking about this amazing, mechanism of replication controllers, and
Well,
then they changed it all to replica sets, and I was like, I'm very confused about this new
I was
stuff, but
also a little bit puzzled about replica sets myself because ultimately it seemed attached to how you would want to scale your app because if you have too many replicas, then you're going to maybe take too many CPU or whatever RAM resources. And I thought to myself,
everything it
how
changed
do
so
you
much.
like if I'm running my app, how many replicas do I need? Do I need two, three, four, five, 10? Do I do it to maximize the
So
resource?
so
Like I never
when I'm
really
talking about
understood how to do it.
2014, 15, all of that was like very basic. Today you would obviously use like auto scaling. You would
Yeah.
even you have
Even
vertical auto scaling
autoscaling
now. You can resize pods without restarting them. Those are all
is
things that you couldn't
autoscaling
do
like
back in that
stable
day.
because like I just doesn't
Yes,
seem
it
so
is.
long. It is
Yes.
because a few years ago I just thought I just don't trust this autoscaler. But yeah, maybe I'm just
Yeah. So that's how I got into it, right? I mean, initially I was doing CoreOS for my friend's startup. Um, and every time the droplet, every time CoreOS updated, nobody has access anymore because
Mhm.
I was
Um,
maintaining their SSH keys
what, what, what
separately.
what
It
was
was super
relationship
interesting.
between CoreOS and Kubernetes? Because CoreOS came out of Docker, didn't it? No, where did
No,
CoreOS come
CoreOS was a company that was also called CoreOS, and they had a operating system called CoreOS, which was a container-centric
from?
operating system. So you would run even your debug tools, you would run everything through containers,
Yeah,
and it was kind of like a precursor to Talos today, I think.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and they
I love that
initially
idea of like using Docker images to like, I don't know, get your basic bash or something. Well, I mean, bash is not a good example, but like your tooling, yeah.
Yeah, and CoreOS originally they had their own scheduler, right? That they built separate from Kubernetes, which was Fleet. And Fleet,
Oh yeah.
they basically extended the idea of a systemd unit to something that you could run across multiple nodes, and you had some scheduling constraints on the systemd unit. I forgot the name of it. That it was a set of units or something like that. But as Kubernetes became more popular, they deprecated their own fleet and they adopted Kubernetes, and then they built their
Right.
own flavor of it
So,
called
s-
Tectonic.
so Kubernetes is systemd free. So it feels like systemd went head to head with Kubernetes and Kubernetes won, right?
Not really. I mean, systemd was the way to run, like, was replacing your upstart and your init systems on the operating system, right? And Red Hat made it the default, and a lot of distributions like rejected it, but then Ubuntu
Yeah.
adopted it, and then everyone followed.
Kubernetes uses a different, what was the name of the control plane? Kubelet or whatever to manage.
Uh, no, Kubernetes completely decoupled from it. Like systemd was purely your init system on your
Yeah, but how does
Linux.
Kubernetes manage the pods and
Well, that's the container runtime
application?
interface,
Sorry.
right?
Okay.
So the container runtime interface.
Yeah.
So originally, a lot of them use Docker to basically like pull the container image, set up the file system, launch the process within the contain like the namespaces and the
Mm.
control group, set everything up for you, right? And then over time, there was this split between Docker and CoreOS because Docker was moving fast and breaking things. And so Red Hat froze the Docker versions, and then CoreOS created a new project called Rocket, which is using systemd and Spawn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
systemd and spawn. Yes.
And that was like
Mm.
Leonard, was it named Leonard, like Pit
Put,
One,
put, butchering.
Twittering, yeah, he basically said he came to Singapore as well, talked about like
Yeah, yeah.
systemd and
I've
spawn
written
is
that
how
down.
I debug. Yeah, systemd and spawn is how I debug kernels. So I use systemd and spawn all the time. It's a very solid product. And then CoreOS built Rocket on top of it, and they added. The good thing about this competition was that they said like, okay, Docker is using very insecure, like they didn't have proper verification of the images, and so CoreOS said we need to focus on that, and Docker was like, that's not our priority. Our priority is developer experience. And CoreOS says, okay, we're building systemd and spawn, and we're adding this GPG based signing of images and layer like image layer verification, like basically what enterprises need for security. And the response of Docker was there, well, you're using GPG is so old. We use TUF, like the update framework, and we are using like a notary for signing layers. And they came up with like a new, completely new tool set. I think Docker at the time had a lot of money as well, a lot of VC investments. And so Docker was like this one company, and Solomon Hayek was like fighting super hard against these giants, Google, Red Hat, and others. And
Yeah, they had their
kind
own
of
form and whatever.
yeah. So when they did the DockerCon that year that
Forms.
CoreOS announced Rocket, they made an exposition about like the whale. At the start of the conference. They did something. I only watched everything on Twitter. I never went to any of these events, but I saw on Twitter that they had like this opening of the conference and the rocket launch failed. And hint hint, rocket failed. It's like they would do these things all the time.
Oh man, we can skip.
um,
I'm just conscious this is supposed to be the intro for your grid app. Oh my
yeah.
God, this is going to be a video unto itself almost. But like,
No, no, no. Yeah.
quickly,
Just the background.
why did Core OS fail actually?
It didn't fail. It was acquired by Red Hat.
Okay, well I mean, it did fail in my book because it did seem to go out of the view. It seems to have lost
I
mind.
think the biggest problem was they had built Tectonic, which was like a Terraform-based Kubernetes flavor. So they had their own boot system. So they had like this cloud init extension called, I forgot, Ignition. They had this Ignition. It's like user data on steroids. For Pixie booting on networks like your CoreOS and so on. It was amazing. Like I never ran CoreOS on LAN, but they were focused on like enterprise customers, not necessarily running in the cloud. And Tectonic was all Terraform with like Ignition provider. And the problem was Tectonic was really expensive. Like the license to run Tectonic, like you could run it for free, but you wouldn't get some of the like SSO and other enterprise features. So originally Tectonic was their
So
commercial offering.
what is the link with Terraform? You would use Terraform to provision it or something, or
Yeah, so they had the like Tectonic was basically a whole bunch of Terraform packaged up with Kubernetes Bootstrap with Ignition with on top of CoreOS. So it would give you a fleet of CoreOS nodes, and it would bootstrap etcd and the control plane for Kubernetes, and it would bootstrap every node to join the cluster properly and all that. So Tectonic on top of that, it was a bit like OpenShift, right? So at the time, a lot of these Kubernetes distributions came out, like the OpenShift from Rancher, like there was Rancher, and there was also from Fedora or SUSE Linux, they had also their own flavor. And pretty much everyone was launching their Kubernetes flavor.
mm,
And before the clouds launched them, like Google
yeah,
had
I think I like the
KE,
Rancher
AWS
one.
had nothing.
The Rancher,
Sorry, yeah,
yeah, I
I
like
did
it.
not like it.
No, you
It
didn't.
was, I mean, it's the same thing with like so my
It was
background's
the
always
most
been very
minimal.
operational. Sorry?
It was the most minimal one. I think that's why I was attracted
It
to it.
was the most like easy using one, like Docker Compose. Like the reason developers like to run Docker Compose is because it's easy, almost no dials and knobs. Same like Rancher, you would just run it, it would just run. It would spin up everything and it would just run. And I hated that because I was deep into like spinning up my etcd, my own certificates, my own, user data at that time. So the thing is, you start digging in really deep, and then as you are, I wasn't working at a company that was like having real needs. I wasn't working at any company using Kubernetes, right? So I was doing this all for fun. So all of this stuff that took away my fun, like Rancher, that was no good. I wanted to do it myself. So I remember very early somebody asked, like, I was talking about running a mail server on DigitalOcean, and somebody said, "Why wouldn't you just use AWS?" And I was like, "Oh, why would I pay all of this extra money? I can do it myself." And then, of course, you
$2.
get called. Yeah, no, and then you get called in these problems because my friend's startup, he's trying to send emails, and then they go into like they go
Quarantine.
into
Something
yeah,
or
they go in quarantine, and then he's like, "Oh, Vincent, what is this? Like our spam house reputation is bad, and then it's because you're using DigitalOcean IPs, and they are obviously like blacklisted in spam house." And
mm,
so then you start to get all of these issues, and also, once I got all of the Kubernetes figured out and I could do cluster upgrades easily and all of that. And then you don't want to bother with it anymore after a while. Like that's done. You've played enough with it, and now you want to just focus on deploying things on top of it. So it took a while to get to that stage. And also when you're in a company and you have to deliver a business value and not just spin up
yeah.
clusters, then you start to say, actually, I
So
can use
in
ECS.
your current role, are you still a Kubernetes monkey or whatever the term is for it?
So my
Or
last
are
role that
you
I
more,
used Kubernetes was like 2 years ago.
okay, so now you've like gone Terraform-ish. Well, you've gone CDK or
Yeah. I really was interested about CDK. I just never had the opportunity to play with it, right?
mm,
So I got into an organization that used CDK, and then I saw the benefits of it, and then also I worked plenty of times that I trained people how to use Kubernetes, and when you use something like ECS and you have something like CDK that can create container definitions or Fargate backed, just define my workload. It's so much easier to work with than if you have to like define everything with Argo CD and GitOps and endless lines of YAML. And so again, it's one of those things that's very interesting for a while. And then once you've done it, you get really bored of it.
okay.
Initially,
Well,
yeah,
it sounds
every
like
time.
I mean, yeah, like I think I empathize with you. We we all exposed to these technologies, and as you should, and like yeah, I know about Kubernetes, I know about Terraform, I know about CDK. The more we know, the better we
Mhm.
are, really. It's not like I do find it weird when
The
people,
more we understand the trade-offs as well,
yeah, that
because that's a problem. Like we don't really know the trade-offs. If we
yeah.
only know one tool, we think this is the best tool ever
Yeah,
until we
so I'm
start using
always a little
other
bit
tools.
dubious when people try to sell themselves as a Kubernetes infrastructure engineer. It's like, why don't you learn other things, dude?
But the good thing is though, like I use Fargate a lot at work now, and there's several cases where we're like, oh, we need to do this thing or that thing, and I'm like, well, that would just be an Ingress manifest on Kubernetes, and that would just be like
Yeah,
something like a service mesh or like
exactly.
an it.
Trade-offs, the comparisons, that's
You
valuable.
very quickly like find the limitations where you're like, well, in Kubernetes, I would control my service mesh or my overlay network. Uh, for example, one issue that we had is we wanted to save cost and use like memory swappiness and like be able to because we have very bursty workloads of different services. So one service we don't need very big machines, but when they do need the resources, when certain request comes in, they need to be able to take up a lot of memory and CPU and
Yeah,
not necessarily fight each other. So the idea was to basically oversubscribe nodes, which you can do easily with Kubernetes, right? You can have only two nodes and give your pods a lot of memory, even though you don't have the memory available. Kubernetes will be able to run them, and you can't do that with Fargate, obviously, because Fargate you have to give it exactly what you want, and it's going to run exactly that. You can't really burst. So
mm.
so then we needed to run our own ECS nodes. And that was before AWS announced managed nodes. By the way, that they also just announced like a month ago. But anyway, you
Wait a minute. AWS has had managed ECS for a while. I mean, Fargate is managed. What do you
no
mean by
no
that?
managed auto scaling groups like you didn't have that until like a month ago.
Okay, I'll take your word
Yeah.
for it. Okay.
Yeah, so they just announced it. Like you could spin up, right? Your capacity providers in ECS can be either Fargate capacity provider, where they take care of everything, and you just say the dimensions of what you want, and they will just, make it available. But you can't oversubscribe really much.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I think I see. Okay, so I think we need to what do you call it? Connect to your grid project. So how would you? introduce your grid project so that makes the next video kind of
Makes sense.
make sense.
Um, how do I?
Well, let me see if I can jog your memory. Like, I think you introduced grid to me because you said that, the whole open tacos things was interesting, but it didn't support strongly typed uh,
Right.
stacks. So the grid API is sort of demonstrating that you can you can properly track your infrastructure state
Yeah.
in a compelling way using, yeah, the strongly typed CDK stacks.
Yes. So a lot of these projects that were introduced, like from Terra Team, which is the state graph, and from Digger, which is the open tackle, um, they're just focused on classic Terraform, which doesn't expose a lot of the type system of the resources, right? So StateGraph does promise that every resource has a type, so it should be able to give you more information.
Mm,
It gets rid of all of the states. So instead of having like many small states, you have one big state graph. Every resource is in there. Every resource has like attributes that are strongly typed. So you don't need to go through the state as a boundary or an encapsulation mechanism, um, because everything lives next to each other, right? With Digger, they are still allowing you to create multiple states, and you're able to define the dependencies between the states, and you're able to define RBAC on top of that. And now they're integrating with WorkOS for like your deployment mechanisms. I haven't looked at OpenTaco recently, but both of them. I mean, I kind of like the OpenTaco approach because I still believe that you want to encapsulate a little bit like the for example, the platform team may want to encapsulate the landing zone that they provide, right? What we as a service provide to other teams, we maybe only want to expose the subnet IDs and the VPC ID, and we don't want to like have all of the VPC information, network gateways, everything. Uh, all these resources don't mean much for other teams. We just say this is the landing zone, and we have a couple of outputs for you, a network ID and a subnet ID, and you can launch in there. Right. So to me, a Terraform state as an encapsulation mechanism still makes sense. I don't know how StateGraph is going to solve that problem. Um, and I talked to them and they were like, we want type information just like you. But they're building it there on their own. They're doing it in OCaml, and I haven't been really been like able to communicate
oh,
with them
yeah, they're
much.
doing no camel. Oh man.
Yeah. So then OpenTaco, they're building this in Golang, which is much more approachable in a DevOps ecosystem because Terraform, Kubernetes, everything is Golang. So Golang tooling is available, and I try to talk to them, but they don't really respond at all. And also because of the reaction of the community towards OpenTaco, it feels a little bit like persona non grata. So um, I feel like I want something similar that allows me to expose the deeply typed information that I have from my
Mm,
library.
mm,
So I have a library that gives you these higher level constructs. We talked about it. We showed
yeah,
like this, the way that you can visualize it. You can define like, hey, by the way, my constructs can be displayed on a diagram, and this is how it displays itself. So
yeah,
you
yeah.
can add these interfaces on top of it,
And
right?
that demo that we recorded, just for people's context, was recorded like 2 weeks ago. You
Yeah,
said that you were gonna spec kit the auth.
authentication.
I
Yeah,
think I said in the video back then that I don't think it's
it's
gonna do
gonna
it
be
well.
painful.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
painful.
yeah. So the
Was I
thing about
right? Was I right, Vincent? For once.
yes, you were right, Guy. Yeah. You want to yeah. Okay. So so the Spec Kit experiment was 2, 3 weeks. I think by the time that we recorded the demo, I had spent 2 weeks on it, and it had raced through all of my questions, and it had built a monorepo with Golang, it had built a CLI and SDK, it had built a UI, hooked everything up, and that will be shown in the demo. Uh, the one thing missing for me to deploy this into my organization is to have a strong authentication, and because you know you want to be able to integrate with SSO and things like that. So I thought, I'm just going to ask Spec Kit to do that. And I think my biggest mistake was
Mm.
to assume that this could all be done in like one feature. I didn't break it down. I said like this is authentication, authorization, and web login and everything.
SSO, SAML,
Yeah, no, no,
OIDC.
no SAML, just OIDC. And so SpecKit did a great job, 3 days planning it. Like I said, I spent 70% time planning and then 40% time implementing for some other features. So I was very confident I was done with the planning phase. However, it kind of,
When you say planning phase, were you using like the plan mode of Claude, or were you
no,
using
no,
like plan
no,
mode
no.
of Spec
Yes, because the plan mode of Cloud works within the context window, right? And then as soon as the context window is done, maybe you can carry over, like with a compact, you can carry over some to-do items, but it's very limited and a lot of context gets lost. So the
Uh,
spec kit planning phase is really focused on capturing all of the functional requirements and like gap analysis and edge
mm.
cases and writing that down into
Oh,
Markdown.
did you ever play with beads in the end, Steve?
Yes.
Did you
So
find
I
yay or nay? What's your
so
verdict?
so so full honesty, I've been playing with it only today. And so far, um it does some interesting things. I think Beats prompts the agent to spend a little extra time to do its own planning phase on each individual issue. So my biggest problem with Speckit as doing this OIDC, which supposedly I said was going to take me 3 days, and it's been almost 4 weeks. um, my biggest issue is that the resulting task lists became a 2,000 line markdown file, and you know even when I start on one phase, maybe 6 tasks within that massive list of like 80 tasks,
Mm.
um, it kind of like blows the context pretty fast. Like, hey, Cloud, we've got this beautiful plan and research and
How do
everything.
you track the context? Because like I think in Claude you have to go slash context every time, and that's annoying as hell.
Yeah, so I there's this status bar thing now that you can do, but I've got only
I
my
don't think the
my
status bar
bash.
shows it. I don't think you can
But
custom.
there's quite a few people that write tools that run like daemons in the background that monitor the context, and so
Oh,
you could
so is
you
that
can
what you
run
use,
those daemons
or
and
do
then
you have a?
display it in the status bar.
How do you track it then?
No, I do context. I haven't installed those state. I just initiated the status bar in my cloud right now, so I do have like my original bash prompt. And I've seen people talk on Reddit about, hey, here's a daemon that shows you your tracks your usage. You run the daemon, and then
Yeah.
your bash prompt can show
Funny
it.
how everyone wants this, but they haven't delivered on this status bar showing the
But
content.
they have delivered on other cool stuff. But you're really derailing me. But they have delivered, for example, on the ability to like you can trigger a plan mode, get a plan, and then you can Control G edit it. Control J, the G. How you say G?
Okay.
Gangster. Um,
Yeah. Oh, golf.
so you can edit the plan now. Before, when the plan wasn't right, you put in a prompt and say, no, 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 you're missing this, and then it would do another plan, and then it
Okay.
would miss something
Okay.
else.
So going back to beads, your
Yeah.
2,000 line markdown or whatever you
So
say.
so this is the problem, right? I've got this massive task list from the Spec Kit research phase and planning phase. So not the cloud mode, like not the cloud code planning, but the Spec Kit planning, which is multiple steps, a big workflow, generates a lot of research and creates very detailed tasks of like multiple phases. It became huge because my feature was too big, and I should have probably cut it down. But what I'm hoping now is with Beats, it actually parses out the tasks and tracks them not in a markdown file, but in like a database, like an SQLite, right? And it synchronizes the database file to a JSON format, like a JSON-L, so you can, commit it to your Git, so you can see the diffs, yeah. And they can even handle the merges of completed tasks better, supposedly, but I haven't done that yet. So with Beats, now actually just had a very nice experience, which was it had completed 3 tasks and it hadn't blocked. So Beats adds workflow and it hadn't blocked the next task. And then I was not using Sonnet, I was using Haiku. And Haiku looked at the issue that it needed to work on, the task that it needed to work on, and it went into this like planning mode, which I think is something that Beats introduced because I've never seen Cloud do that until I activated Beats. And after it went into the planning mode, it came up with its plan, and it was different from. I mean, something wasn't right. There was some mistakes in there. I was like, that's not right. And so the cool thing is, I didn't have to open my Markdown file and then scroll down to this like phase number 8, which is at line 800, and then find exactly what was the original task that it was supposed to work on. I could just run beat show that issue originally that you started with, and I saw immediately like, hey, there's a mistake here. And so it really allowed me to slice and dice directly to the particular task. So instead of having like this massive markdowns that you have to also blow up your context with, you can now like very directly ask questions about particular issues and look at them and find the links between them.
Mm.
So because it creates a graph of issues, right?
On
So
the
so
topic
far
of the links, have you like linked them up, like showing which ones depend on another, or does it do it
it did
automatically?
it did it automatically. So I asked, yeah, I have recorded the Loom about this process, but it's a bit messy. Basically, what happened is I was going back and forth between Cloud and Gemini. Gemini is not good at writing code, but it's great at reading code and giving like a review of another plan. Codex can do the same thing, but Gemini does it much faster. So what happened is Cloud came up with this plan. We're gonna do ABC. And then I went to Gemini. I said, does that make sense? Like, can you go look if that already exists? And Gemini says, no, none of these things exist. That is bullshit, but that is correct. So then I went back to Cloud and I came up with like a 300 line prompt. And then I push it into a new cloud instance with Beats activated, because you have to like install the MCP, you have to initialize your agent, you have to make sure that it knows that it needs to use Beats. And then I gave it this 300 line prompt that I fine tuned with Gemini, and it went ahead and created, okay, Gemini made it very clear, we need to do this, and this. And then Cloud used Beats, created all the issues, linked them together, what depended on what unblocks what, and then created a beautiful graph. And it started with the first two issues that were
Does it
available.
show a graph?
And
It,
um,
is there
it,
some sort of UI? No.
I haven't looked at I haven't seen a graph, but I've seen the full JSON output and I've seen the full list, and I've been able to look at the issues very quickly. So I haven't tried the graph yet, but so far, like I said, I think Beads adds through its MCP tools some instructions to like prompt Cloud when it picks up an issue to do some additional research. And the issue itself that was created by Cloud within Beats actually has a lot of context. It captured all of the requirements, acceptance criteria, and things like that, which is, I was surprised. Because I thought, when you have a to-do list in Cloud, it's just like one line. I need to do this one thing. I don't know
Mm.
how Cloud tracks more information than that just one line. But in Beats, I can see it. Like there's a title and there's a description. It says like, this is what we need to do. This is why we need to do it. These are the files we need to change. And this is the acceptance criteria. It
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's pretty
I'm
cool.
not
It's kind of,
sure. I'm not a
yeah.
1,000% sure it's the MCP, because I noticed when I hit this MCP bug last week that Claude, for example, was just invoking the BD CLI right on my my
Yeah,
shell.
I had to bootstrap the agent to make sure that it has like you need to use the tools, not the CLI.
Yeah,
I originally
BD Quick Start or whatever inside your agents.md or whatever.
yeah, I did the BD onboarding. And so yeah, but I also wanted to originally like, why do I need an MCP? Like I hate MCPs
Yeah,
because
I don't. That's what I was going to say next. I don't think you need an MCP, but just
I
because
thought,
it was broken and it seemed to still work.
yeah. And I also installed the agent skill. So Beats also has like this new thing from Cloud called like
Yeah,
skills.
all right. I think on the webpage you can. It's called a plugin. Is that the same thing? No.
I'm not sure. So I didn't want to install the plugin. I didn't know
Went
what
to
it
the
was going to
skill.
do. So I actually went through everything that the plugin does myself. Like I installed the CLI. I think you have to do anyway. You have to install the CLI. And then I used UV to install the tool, which is the MCP. So I can run the MCP directly. I did not install it as a plugin. And then I had to do the Git hooks, but that's part of your BD init. So when you init it in a repository, it will create your Git hooks. Then it had something like, do you want to go multi-repo? And I think that's one of the cool features is that it can do multi-repo, but mine is a very big mono-repo, so I don't want to do that. So I was like,
Wow,
it
I
gave me a
didn't know.
warning.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a daemon. Yeah,
This
it's
is
really
really good.
cool.
I mean, I think we have to cut it here because I
I
haven't.
think we need to do a separate session on beats.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you have enough for intro, but yeah,
I think we got
that
plenty for intro. I mean, I'm hoping just to cut
I
this into
also need to go.
your grid, and yeah, and I'll timestamp it so people could skip it if they wanted to.
By
Okay.
the end of this week, I want to try beads with Spec Kit. So now I'm learning it, like on my current task. Like, but then the next step is I want Spec Kit not to create this 2000 line markdown. I want Spec Kit to use beats. I haven't done that yet. So
Sounds
I'm learning it first. Yeah.
sounds awesome. Okay, we'll keep in touch. See ya.
Okay,
Bye.
see you. Have
I
a
did
nice day.
really enjoy this. I think we covered a lot of things. I think I,
Maybe
I'm in
one
the
more
right
thing.
headspace. Okay, one more thing.
So basically, we talked about OpenTaco and all of these state management solutions.
Yeah, we
Also,
didn't
now
talk
we
about
just
your
talked
grid
about the
API.
integration patterns, right? We mentioned that you can use a variable file on disk or a big config file that keeps track of all of the different, like a dictionary of all of the different integration keys, right? So at my organization, we started originally trying to use an integration registry. Then we moved towards like the teams only publish dev from their product repo, and when they want to go to staging and need to integrate there, they publish their infrastructure as a package, and then we consume it and integrate it within our mono repo. So we have a big Terraform mono repo. A lot of organizations have a big Terraform mono repo because you have those file system requirements to read data, right? Because we couldn't use the integration registry. So instead, they publish their artifact, they version it, and then we integrate it. The same for production. But I still want to have the ability to go across repositories and integrate without, um, having to publish things. So that's why I started to build this thing called the grid, which is around Terra constructs. So Terra constructs has already the capability of strongly typing your outputs. So if you need to integrate on things, you know exactly what the shape will look like of what you depend on. For example, if we have a cluster, we may have a VPC ID output, we have subnets, which is an array of strings. We
Hmm.
may have more complicated integration points, right? Um, but let me just run the API real quick. API serve, not server, serve. Oh,
The binary.
let's put it on the path. So now the grid API is running, and I will go into the web app and run the dashboard. It's a very basic dashboard. Everything's a bit slow right now. I don't know why. Okay, maybe it's because I have 100
Oh,
different
Vite.
things open. Yes, it's Vite hot
Vue,
modular load.
Vue.js, right?
No, this is React. I don't know
Oh,
anything about front end.
okay.
So this was all written using Spec Kit, using spec-driven development,
Holy moly.
and yeah, and some of the UI elements originally bootstrapped by Bolt, but then yeah, so this is basically the grid when you are creating, for example, the network, which has a bunch of, in this case, there's zero outputs because I haven't really applied anything. But then you have dependencies that define, for example, the staging cluster depends on the subnet IDs from the network and on the
Mm,
VPC ID from the network. Also, the staging database depends on the VPC ID to provision into the
mm.
network. Right? So we have these dependency trackers, and this is really the idea was mainly from OpenTaco, right?
Why are there two arrows going into the cluster? Am I going crazy?
Because every output is tracked individually.
Okay.
Okay, I can do a demo where I actually apply things with Terraform so you can see the colors change when things, and then you know why there's multiple errors. But this is a preset database with
Okay.
some filtering. So I
Do you
can do
know
like,
we need to do like a visual. I think the theme for the next chat is a visual infrastructure because I did want to talk about Adam Jacobs. Oh my God, what is this startup called? Help me, God.
system initiative,
Yeah,
SI, right?
because
Yeah, so
I'm thinking system initiative when I'm looking at this.
I'm not building what he called a dynamic graph, where every node has like different their own hooks on create, read, update, delete. So it's a programmable graph. That's what system
Okay.
initiative
So
is.
yours is more of like a visualization type of.
Mine is a Terraform state on manager, and the idea is to integrate tightly with Terra constructs so that all of these points here are actually strongly typed. So if I'm
Okay, so
bootstrapping,
you
if
can
I'm a
see
product team,
you can see your level twos and things like that in here.
yeah,
So,
but I'm using modules as an encapsulation. So whatever the product team, they can be writing Terraform modules in here. Sorry, I'm
okay,
not using modules as an encapsulation. I'm using states as an encapsulation. So in my case, the platform team is using the AWS VPC module to provision the network and all. And
okay. State. Got it.
yeah, and if they want to expose the VPC and the subnet IDs, they should be able to expose them with a schema. So
Uh,
if they're doing it using Terra construct, the schema is attached to the L2s. So if you you say to the L2 push your outputs out to your state, so you make it available as a contract to other teams, then other teams when they use Terra constructs, they will read that output and they get the schema with it. So they know that this output has this shape because it's one of the problems that I have when I was using the integration registry, right? What are the paths that write things and how do I find the keys that I need and what is the shape of those keys? How do I write them down? How do I read
mm-hmm,
them back out so that I
mm-hmm.
get a strongly versioned feedback,
Contracts and
right?
stuff. Yeah.
Right. So let me do a database reset here. Go back, make DB reset. It's gonna delete the Postgres volume and restart
Mm.
it.
Oh,
Okay.
by the way, why didn't you use SQLite? You just
I'm using an ORM, and it's using the PG dialect. If I want to use SQL, I'm actually adding SQLite as a next step.
okay, okay.
Um,
Because
that's the next feature that Spec Kit's going to be
of
working
course,
on.
unsurprisingly, Claude is an absolute demon with SQLite.
Because SQLite has like no proper column times and types and stuff, right?
Um, I don't really know. Couldn't
When you say
comment.
demon, do you mean the beast like really good at it, or the demon
No,
like chaotic?
no, no. It's really good at it. Like
Oh,
it's
okay. I
able to
thought
up.
demon like it's a devil. Um,
No, I love it. It was able to create these like materialized views and other optimizations to make quite complex views really simple to generate. I mean, it's so incredible, really.
so I will restart the Grid API server and I will restart the web app. Okay. And now if I refresh, there's nothing in there, right? So now if I go to the
By the way, you can bootstrap tasks in VS Code if you have instead of like doing what
manually
you did
typing.
there. Yeah. It's
Oh,
just search VS Code tasks. You'll find out how to do it.
okay, I'll need to do that. So I go into the example Terraform. So here I have a some setup and I should clear, but I will just create a network. And okay, so I go into the network. I remove anything that's there. So right now there's just the Terraform configuration, which
Okay.
is just a null resource. It's not really anything. It's not using AWS, but it simulates a VPC output with the ID of the null
Hmm.
resource and a subnet ID. It's not a list. It's just
Go
an example.
go to the top of the file. Why did you? Okay, so you just specify the provider. Oh,
It's
actually
a
called
single
null. Okay,
file.
okay,
Yeah, it's all not. It's really just a sample Terraform configuration,
okay.
and I will use the grid control. So this command line currently is just a sample CLI implementation. For my personal use, I'm going to use it to integrate within our bootstrapping because we have like a Golang CLI to bootstrap Terraform, and so I'm going to use it to automatically integrate with the API. So the CLI is just one sample implementation that I include with the monorepo, but I have my own that I need to integrate it into. So I'm using state create to create a new state, and I have to give it a logic ID. So this is one of the first things in Terraform or in infrastructure. A lot of times names change. So maybe this could be like the product A network or something like that. But over time, we realize that actually product A network should be shared and it should now become shared network. So the logic ID is decoupled. Under the hood, it generates a unique identity separately. The CLI uses UID v7, but this is again, the database accepts whatever the client wants to use
That's
as a unique
actually
ID.
a really good idea because the minute we have to change our TF state
It becomes a nightmare. More so if you use
back
Terra
end
Grunt. Yeah.
key, I'm always just yeah, I hate that.
You need to do migrations, then you need to keep tracking where the other
But
states were that you depend on.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I like this idea, but I mean, you're only just using it to just keep track of it. You're not using it to help manage it.
Uh, what the logic ID? Yeah, the logic ID is a mutable attribute of the state, but it can be but it is globally constrained as unique. So across the
Yeah.
Postgres,
But
I mean,
I like the idea, but like you're not using it to actually store the state. You're just using it to keep track of it, of course.
yeah. Uh, yeah, we just using it to keep track of it as a unique
Yeah.
identifier.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So at this point, I have created, by the way, I have
Oh,
not run Terraform apply yet, but if I refresh, and I will make this like polling with like web workers, whatever, but right now I just forced it to be. This is one thing when you do spec-driven development, it's really important to scope things down. And at
yeah,
this point,
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
like this might be too complicated, so I put it very explicit,
I
put in a
mean, to be honest,
refresh button,
I'm gang refresh. I don't like to wait for things to happen
right? So
automatically.
now Terraform init and apply will then register the subnet ID and the VPC ID as outputs
Okay,
in the grid, right? So this is running Terraform, right? I'm not running anything else. This is
okay,
literally just Terraform talking to the grid API, and then the
okay,
grid API is extracting the outputs and keeping track of them
okay.
separately. So if I do grid CTL list, state list, I can see it. I can also I can see it's clean because it's just been applied. So
Mm,
if I go to my cluster, which needs to depend on the network, let me remove every Terraform file or grid file that should be in there. So it's only the null resources again that are in here, right? And in this
okay,
case, the cluster needs to read the network VPC ID, right? It depends
okay.
on that. So I can say gridctl state create cluster logic ID, right? And then gridctl depth add from network, and it will find
Ah,
the outputs of the network. And this is where the type will be important, right? But right now, this is a non-Terra construct demo. This is pure Terraform, no typing yet, right?
gotcha.
So in this case, I am the selection is a bit weird. You need to press enter. I'm gonna change that, but anyway,
Okay.
it was a default.
Generated by AI, I can tell.
Yeah, I think it's a p-term default. So right now the network and the cluster has a dependency, and now you see why these
Mm,
errors are separated because you have two different outputs and they may evolve separately. So the cluster depends on the network.
mm.
Sorry, the cluster depends on the network. If I do gridctl state list, I can see that the cluster is stale because it has not been applied, has not been observed by the grid API, right?
Ah,
The gridctl state init again
I
generates
mean,
the backend config for me. But now comes the interesting part. I can use the gridctl or whatever, however I integrate the SDK into my command line or my Golang tooling to to init or to sync the depths. So to sync the depths means it's going to generate the remote state lookup for the network using that unique identity and then pre-generating the
oh.
network locals for me. So I know that there's a subnet ID. Again, this is because I declared that this state needs those two outputs. So it's going to
So
generate
you're
exactly what.
using the data's using the grid backend to grab the to make the link. Okay.
Yes.
You're not relying on the file system.
So I have, yeah, no file system, so I can go across repositories, right? So this is an API server,
Oh
which is
man.
our. This is
I,
tip. I think you can pretty
this is
much do
cool.
this
This is
with
cool. I
Spacelift. You can do this with
you,
Terraform Cloud for
so
sure.
this is something I think would be incredibly fun to deploy in my workplace. So I mean, do you have a standalone binary which I can start running and linking up different state files and drawing a graph? I think that has a lot of value actually.
It has a lot of value. This is going to be Apache 2 open source. I want to open source this once I've got the type schema integration with Terra Construct. It's right now it's in GitHub private repo. I can give you access. I'm not sure about open sourcing it because it's I mean, at this point, it's similar
Mm.
to OpenTaco. I have to be honest. I talked to the OpenTaco people. I
Similar to
understood how they
OpenTaco.
use it. It's not OpenTaco. It's the grid. um, they're doing great work with OpenTaco, by the way. I look on the pull requests; they are adding a lot of features. They added SQLite already, and they're using Lightstream. I think
Okay,
that's what I shared with you.
so there's a lot of overlap with what you're doing in
Is a
OpenTaco.
lot of overlap, except I want type schemas, and they're not talking to me. So I'm like I said, I told them that I could one-shot this in cloud, so I took 10 days to one-shot it in cloud.
Oh man, I'm loving the innovation here. I'm loving it. Yeah, I mean,
See this?
I definitely would love to have this visualization on some state files. But I don't. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, Vincent.
Yeah,
I see myself uh enjoying like a visualization.
but not the
I mean,
type schema.
but even the type schema that could help me
Hmm.
to do some bugs or something like that. I mean, that's the way I see typing is like helping me figure out
Yeah,
where there's issues. Um,
runtime
but
actually
like
compile time.
I would see it as a visualization, but like but that's a hard sell as a product. Like, like it's more of a
It's I'm not selling it. Like I'm so my main goal here is to basically make something available that I can use myself. Also, the way I
uh,
design it, I make the package, the SDK is a strongly typed Golang, and
mm,
because I'm using Connect RPC, I also created TypeScript package because that's what I use in my dashboard in my web app. So in my web app, I'm actually using the grid um where is it? The grid where is the grid? Tcons. Here, I'm using the Tcons I'm auto-generating the clients in TypeScript and in Golang. It could be Java, whatever, because it's using Connect RPC. Although I do need to wrap it because Connect RPC handlers are pretty horrible. And anyway, what I want is to basically use this one in my library to
what is
interact with
Tcon's
the grid.
grid? It's some third party. What is that?
No, that's my workspace. So that's
Oh,
my
okay.
JS SDK, right? It's
Sweet.
auto-generated from the protobuf
What
definitions
what
and
did
then a
oh
little wrapper.
Tcons
Terra
comes from?
constructs. It's
Oh,
all my project, baby.
okay, okay. I'm a little bit slow.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I definitely see the value in that. I really would like to try that out, actually.
Yeah, so how it differs from OpenTaco is they're focused on like you can control the grid using the Terraform provider. My goal is I'm giving you an SDK. I can generate the Terraform provider from the SDK. I can generate um, JavaScript integrations with the grid, which is what I'm doing for my project because I want, and I want additional endpoints control. I want to control what is it that you can attach to a state. I want to be able, or to the dependencies, the outputs itself. That's what I want to control. So I'm doing this currently with Spec Kit, and I'm telling you, this is like 14 days now, and I've been able to bootstrap the repo, build its state dependency logic, have
Yeah.
some CLI improvements, wire up the dashboard, and now I'm working on authentication and authorization, so OIDC
Oh.
integration,
Actually, I'm curious what
bin
it ends
pass.
up doing there. I always
Uh,
think Alt Z in a web app or whatever app is always interesting.
so my prompt was very, very dumb, um, and it took
You,
me, I think, the
you
last
I
eight
mean, just,
hours to I want to out because no tag, right? You're not supposed to say the tag. So it's like I need to add authentication, authorization, and RBAC control. I want to basically
mm,
protect both the control plane. Well, actually, somebody else, like, one LLM. I think again, Codex doesn't give a shit. Codex just went and changed my prompt because I didn't give it that prompt. I gave it a much simpler prompt, and Codex went like, actually, the user's doing a lot more. And he's like, we have a control plane, which is our grid API, and then we have the data plane, which is the Terraform interacting with the Terraform state. So both of them need to be covered by authorization, and I need to expose like the authentication token to the Terraform process so that it can actually run the apply. So
mm,
it's very interesting. I think I've nailed the
that's
tasks now. I'm pretty sure
wow.
I can get this like authentication.
Well,
I
I'll
think
be
by
interested
Tuesday.
because I think this one might be one that it might trip on up on, but cool. Hey,
I'll let you know. Hey,
that
but
that
one
was
more, one
awesome,
more thing,
Vincent. Oh,
one
one
more
more
thing,
thing,
one more
just
thing.
one more thing.
So I just ran the apply, right? So right now it shows that it has consumed and they are
Cool,
clean. Now what
clean.
happens when the network changes? Like that happens all the time, right? People
Well,
recreate the network all the
why
time.
did you say clean and stale? I mean, doesn't seem like the right terminology. I mean, with drift detection in Terraform, it's do they say stale and clean?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I
you
just
just
said
made them
stale and
up.
clean.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So there's a thing here with the network. For some reason, every time you apply a timestamp, forces the VPC to be recreated. Very
Ah,
convenient. So at this point, this one has changed and recreated the output. And if I refresh, now we see that the subnets are the same, but the VPC has, well, this is not a realistic
yeah.
example, right? But that's why you have
But
two
it's
errors.
interesting because it flags a typical problem, right?
Yes, so this is one of the problems of the integration registry, right? Where we're not able to keep track of like who last read the value. This is actually 100% OpenTaco because they have an in digest and an out digest on the edge when you drive these edges. So whenever a state files get written, it keeps captures the outputs and writes out the out digest. And all the other states, whenever they apply, they observe the incoming outputs and they write out their indigest. So whenever the indigest and the outdigest differs, that's when an arrow is no longer um, clean,
I
basically.
don't I
Like,
don't quite understand, but I'll
I,
have to try it, I guess.
yeah, never mind. Like
Okay,
again,
t time out, man. My brain is about to turn
uh,
to mush.
that's it. That's it, really.
Okay. Thanks, Vincent. And if anyone got this far, I really applaud you.
Look, I think we're gonna cut this, no?
I drive for 4 hours to work, because I
Ah,
work in London. So I don't mind long form content, to be honest. It's better than
really?
listening to like, hey, you know, I
I
kind
think
of
you will look. Ah, you mean like last time when I cut it, it was too much.
no, no. I think you do what I would do. I mean, you cut it pretty well for the first third, but the last two thirds you didn't cut it. I mean, that was my impression. Maybe you cut it so well I didn't even notice.
Uh, I don't remember, but
I
I
mean,
do try
th this is two
to
hours
keep
of
it small.
content. It's going to be so hard to cut it, but if you want to cut it, you do you, Vincent.
You don't know me. I record myself using Spec Kit for 4 hours and I cut it down into like a 30 minute, like to the interesting
What?
sections. I do.
So you're uploading videos of you using Spec Kit already?
I have Loom. I share with my colleagues or with my friends, and then I see
Oh,
nobody watch it.
come on. Get a YouTube channel. Get a YouTube channel. Someone will
Yeah.
watch. I don't know who you are, but thank you. Okay,
I
see
don't know how
you.
am I gonna get this. Yeah, see you. Have a
Bye.
lunch or whatever.
Yeah, you
Bye, bye,
too.
bye.
Cheers. Good night.